Good morning and welcome to the June 12th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Market Report. My name is Tom Luongo. I hope you're all having a great Wednesday. God, it's raining like hell out here. It's been this way for the last couple days, actually. And after 2 weeks worth of Dante's Easy Bake, where we had 100-degree weather and similar humidity but no rain, this is both a blessing and a curse, because this is the kind of weather, or that goes on for 3 or 4 days, where then the goats wind up turning up sick because they don't because they're eating wet grass, and it's just never a good time. So they've got hay out in their hay feeders this morning, even in the summertime, because this is what I have to do now. So and so hopefully I can actually get this done before the power blows off. So let's get started, and I'll just move on. So. Morning, everyone. Brexit's not done because John Bercow's an asshole. What else is new? Today they're going to be voting on yet another bill to table another bill to stop any future Tory government from implementing a no-deal Brexit. Parliament is insistent, the Remainers within Parliament are insistent that they have control over the process. This Parliament is not like Theresa May, who, by the way, is going to go back and take her seat on the benches now that she's no longer Prime Minister, which I find hysterical and sad, because we have to make sure that we have as many votes to remain in the European Union as possible in the British Parliament. The corruption is so naked at this point that it's insane. Latest Comres polling I just saw while popping through my Twitter feed has the Brexit Party getting completely wiped out of Boris Johnson as Tory Prime Minister, and actually attempts to take them out on a no-deal Brexit. I find that a little specious. I've also seen some stuff about the postal votes in the Peterborough by-election from the other day, which suggests massive fraud. All the postal votes totals were, for every ward, were 750 votes. Like, the same 750 people voted by postal ballot in every precinct, the equivalent of precincts here in the United States. But will anything be done about it? Probably not. And that's just the way things are. So most likely the Brexit candidate won that election, but it was stolen from them. And we'll continue to move on while we watch the slow motion, or the continued slow motion betrayal of Brexit at every level during this process. The Comres polling that I saw does seat projections as to based on which one of the candidates for the Tory leadership, how the vote would shake out based on the number of seats, based on the polls. I think that's probably highly specious data at this point, but there it is. It's something to consider. So as we move forward, but the truth of the matter is that any attempt to remove Parliament from the process will be met with incredibly strong opposition. So, again, thanks to people, traders like John Bercow and Oliver Letwin and others, they're going to be tabling motions to allow the Parliament to take control of the business away from the government and move on. So this is what we have now. This is the latest thing. They'll just continue to do this until they can bind everything down as much as humanly possible. In the end, I don't think it actually matters, because there'll have to be a general election at some point. So we'll see what happens. And the best thing that can happen, to be honest with you, is if Johnson is elected by the Tories as Prime Minister, the first thing he should do is call for snap elections and get rid of this Parliament. This is like a Chinese finger trap. The more these people try to wiggle out of the situation, the more they try to wiggle out of doing their duty, the more they're going to make people angry, and the more they're going to lose the faith of the people, and the revolt will be epic. It's coming. It's already here. It's coming. The European parliamentary elections were only the beginning. I don't think they were the relief valve of people's anger. I think it was actually quite the opposite of that. So we'll see how things shake out over the course of the next couple of weeks. Germany's political class is making more and more noise every day about normalizing relationships with Russia. This is big. The only one who's not talking about it in German political circles is Angela Merkel. Everyone else, Heiko Maas, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer is now the latest one, which is Merkel's successor in the CDU, who apparently is still in charge, even though there were reports that Merkel took control of the party again. But Kramp-Karrenbauer came out today or yesterday at on a live stream that was streamed by Die Welt, that she wants normalization of relations with Russia, that the sanctions are hurting Germany terribly, yada, yada, yada. This is along with German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas and the head of the Prime Minister of Saxony was at St. Petersburg Economic Forum last week, stating similar things. So this is continuing to build within German politics, and it's a tide that Merkel can't hold back for much longer. There are some interesting things happening in Ukraine that may or may not be signaling that parts of the Minsk agreements, the Minsk Accords, would actually be implemented. It looks to me like Zelensky wants to do the right thing, but doesn't have any control over his own government to actually get things done. I'm not sure. I'm seeing really mixed signals out of Zelensky at this point. At the same time, I see multiple reports of the U.S. and Canada and the Brits literally remaking the Ukrainian armed forces in line with NATO. So they're going to be subsumed into NATO, whether anybody likes it or not. Ukraine is eventually going to be split completely. The Donbass will be either its own country, likely renamed Malorossiya, like they were talking about a year ago, or before Zakharchenko was blown up at a roadside cafe, or they'll apply for quote-unquote annexation into Russia, and Ukraine will be split, and then U.S. missile batteries will be put right on the Russian border, pointed at Moscow. This is the world we live in. Trump is moving massive numbers of troops into Poland. So, yeah. And the Germans are very meekly saying, let's lift sanctions. These are not independent actors. These are people who are not world leaders. So that's the game board right now. And at the same time, I just saw something from, want to shout out to WDM for bringing to my attention two articles this morning, one by Elijah Magnier, one by Thierry Mason. I can never remember if I'm pronouncing his name properly. About the meeting between the national security advisors of Russia, the United States, and Israel today is going on right now. Also, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan is going to Tehran at Trump's request to open up talks and act as the United States proxy, because Abe is a good lap poodle and does exactly what he's told. I don't think that we're going to get anywhere with this. Trump is going to have to climb down a major mountain. Netanyahu is never going to let him do that. If you look at the situation in Syria today, Netanyahu was offered by the Russians a good deal last year, and he immediately turned around and broke it. Iranian forces were removed from Quneitra and the Golan Heights border, and a deal brokered by the Russians last summer, and the Israelis and Iran and Hezbollah moved all of their forces out. And then Netanyahu turned around and bombed strategic Syrian targets deep within the country. And now all those troops have been, and all those advisors and all that material has been moved back to the Golan Heights border. And Russia's now powerless to do anything about it, because Netanyahu is not reliable. The same way that Trump is not reliable, the same way that John Bolton is not reliable. These people do not know how to keep to their agreements. And because they are not able to keep to their agreements, no agreements can be reached. Tehran is not stupid. They're not going to listen to this. They're not going to listen to Shinzo Abe promise the moon, and then have Trump turn around and put more sanctions on people after a deal is agreed to, because that's what he will do. Because there's no limit on these people's behavior. They don't recognize. You have to realize that every one of the people I'm talking about this morning do not recognize the limits on. There should be any limits on their behavior. That all behavior is justified in the pursuit of their goals. This is what people who are ideologically possessed, corrupted by power, this is the way they think. This is the way they are. They are not rational people. And that includes Donald Trump. For anybody still listening to this podcast and to my voice, still believes that Donald Trump has any shred of human decency left in his fucking soul, you're out of your mind. Pardon my French. Look at his actions, look at his deeds, and stop trying to tell me that there's some kind of plan here. The man can't go 24 hours without sanctioning somebody. There's not a plan here. There is, you haven't caved in yet. Okay, I'm going to make it worse for you. You haven't caved in yet. The beatings will continue until morale improves. This is the behavior of a madman. And it doesn't matter whether it's all a joke or it's all a bluff or whatever. It does not matter. It's wrong. And this is the problem. No one has ever told these people that this type of behavior is wrong. Let's get to the charts like a jet here. All right. So, pivotal week for gold after a massive, $75 move. We've talked about at length. We remember on Sunday I reminded you that we saw in the weekly closing data, the weekly data from last week, that gold had broken the previous high for 2019 at which is established at just under $1,350 an ounce. We saw a break to $1,352. We immediately saw a washout in gold to open the week. Not surprised by this. Tried to scare a lot of people back into the box. Some profit taking, some headline manipulation, whatever, the things that they do. Interesting this morning that we're trading back around 1340. So we got 2 days left in the trading week for gold. And a down bar for this week would be very good. Gold doesn't like to, in this bear market, gold doesn't like to go up more than 3 weeks in a row anyway. I mean, by the time we get to a 3-week uptrend, we got a 3 and 4 chance of reversing. That's what this is telling us. That's what these numbers are telling us. So far, we're tracing an inside bar, which, as I've said many times, is also usually a harbinger of a reversal. But given the size of these bars, that's not usually the case. Usually, what happens is that you wind up like this, where you wind up with a low volatility bar, which winds up tracing as an inside bar. An inside bar, again, to remind new people, that is one where you break neither the previous high nor the previous low. An outside bar is where you break one of those, and an engulfing bar is where you break both. Okay, and engulfing bars are usually incredibly powerful signals, like this one here. This is a bullish 1-bar reversal engulfing bar, where the closing price was above the high of the last bar in the downtrend, and we had a break to the previous low and then a massive rally to end the week. This was the signal that eventually gold was going to break higher. It took 4 weeks for that to break out to occur, but this was your bar that told you that the downtrend was over and that the bulls had had asserted that they're not going to let the price go lower. Then it just is a matter of enough bulls getting online to push the price higher, and that just takes time. And the longer that goes on, and the longer it takes for gold the longer it goes on that gold doesn't break down, and this statement is true and correct, and more people believe that statement is true and correct, then we can get the conditions for a rally to happen, and look at the rally that we got. So when I talk about inside bars being harbingers for reversals, you can see it here. Like, we have this beautiful uptrend in gold, and then an inside bar, and then all of a sudden another inside bar, and then a blow-off peak, and then a collapse. A classic example of market that was, tried to trade higher, and you could almost argue that this was a building another, kind of another base at this level at 1320 for an assault on 1350. We got it. It lasted 4 minutes, and then the bears came in and crushed it and moved it down $70 over 4 or 5 days or 8 days. And that set up, another 6-week downtrend, and then a 6-week consolidation pattern, and then another attempt, and that's where we are today. And gold looks decent here. It doesn't look great, but it looks decent. So if we close in the upper half of this bar for this week, so the range on this bar is from 1352 down to about 1305. So if gold closes around 1325 or anything above 1328, that midpoint of this bar would be a bullish signal, even if it's an inside bar, because you're setting up the possibility of a sideways consolidation at this level for an assault on 1375. And 1375 on a weekly closing basis, to me, as far as I'm concerned, would be the beginnings of a new gold bull market. That's secular in nature. And we talked about that on Sunday's report as well. For those of you who missed it, I talked about this in terms of both gold, in terms of both the dollar and the euro making new highs last week. So not holding and not closing above those new highs. So it's not quite ready to blast off, but it made new highs, and that's always an important moment. All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. Not a lot going on in Bitcoin here, but you'll note that what I said on Sunday, looking at last week's close, that we avoided in Bitcoin a 1-bar weekly reversal, even though we got this massive down bar. And this week and this morning, we're holding that same level. So this level in here is acting as support now. It's not strong support, but it's like the magnet that everybody's pulling back to, because everybody can read the same chart that I can and want to see whether or not. And so there's a lot of fight going on around this low as to whether or not this low is going to hold for the week or not. Now, it's only Wednesday, and again, Bitcoin trades 24/7, so a lot more trading is going to go on here between now and Sunday at midnight when this bar is going to close. So, but if it closes in this range here, it's an interesting moment, because again, what have we got? Here's a big, huge 13, 15-week uptrend, whatever the hell it is. It's insane. 4, 8, 12, 13-week uptrend. So it was due to correct, and we got a downtrend. We got a down bar. And then we follow up after this big washout, after this massive, massive run. This is a massive run from just under 4,000 to just over 9,000 in 13 weeks, in a quarter, to then have a 1-week correction of, 20% of the move, and then an inside bar, reaffirming both this low and this breakdown level. This is a market whose bull run is not done yet, at least as of today. We'll know more by the end of the week. Okay? Shouldn't really be much more complicated than that. All right. This is a theme that I have not. Every once in a while, I like to throw curveballs at you. I like to look at something different. Now, I've been looking at wheat prices on and off, and corn prices on and off now for a few months, waiting for the time. And I haven't looked at it, and I'll be honest with you, in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But the last time I looked at it, back in, I don't know, probably April, I didn't see anything interesting. I was looking here. Probably the last time I looked was early April, when the first stories about how bad the flooding out west was from this year's weather, which has been insane, as to whether or not we were going to start getting higher wheat future prices. And I think that the chart tells you everything you need to know. Now wheat's trading at $5.24 a bushel, $5.24 a bushel. That's what this means. 524 cents per bushel. And the market has finally realized that no, it's really serious out west. Plantings are late. The runoff is bad. The flooding is bad. Wheat prices are going to rise dramatically here. And they could easily rise dramatically. And this is something I've actually been thinking about putting in the portfolio for the newsletter, waiting for that signal when I get a fundamental shift in the wheat market. Because if we're moving into a period of a Maunder minimum global cooling, then food prices are going to rise. If we're moving into a period of potentially higher inflation, because the Fed's going to lower interest rates and yada, 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 we're going to get commodity. So if the Fed goes on a QE binge or lowers rates, which they're most likely going to do, and give Donald Trump everything he wants so that the fracking boom can keep going on another 6 months or a year or whatever, it's going to cause base level commodity price inflation. It's going to be putting upward pressure on. Now, whether or not it's going to be enough to overcome the other, the supply deficit, not the supply deficit, but but demand deficit. Well, that's a different story, right? But there's going to be a monetary quotient to what happens with the price of food, just like there's going to be a weather quotient. But it could be that everything's kind of lining up for a massive run in food prices here in the United States. We'll see. Okay, just watch this carefully. I'd say, honestly, a weekly close above this bar here would be a big deal. It would negate all of this stuff here, and we'd have I would watch for the price breaking above 540 or so, 538, 540. Convincingly breaking this area on a weekly, if not monthly, closing basis. I just wanted to show you the weekly chart here, just to whet your appetite on this, all puns intended, and to put this for something else for you to keep your eyes on. All right, and the last thing to talk about this week is the Dow. Now, last week, here's a perfect example of what I talked about earlier with gold, when we talked about gold and this bullish one-bar reversal engulfing bar. Like, how many adjectives can I put in front of the word bar? Well, we got the same thing here. This is a one-bar engulfing reversal bar, bullish engulfing bar. One bar reversal, bullish engulfing bar. That's what this is. It's a reversal, one bar. It took one bar to reverse the signal by closing above this high. It's an engulfing bar because we broke both the previous high and the previous low. And it's bullish because it went up. And it countered the downtrend. So this is your support level that held, that didn't hold, but the market wants to rise to trade above. This is now your new lower support band. And now this week, we've already broken the previous high. We had huge pot odds to break the previous high, 77% chance versus a 2.5% chance on the downside. We didn't trace an inside bar here. We didn't open high and then move down and then muddle around it here. Immediately broke the new high to a new high, and we're trading above. We're trading right around the open for the week or the high of last week, which is all, relatively bullish. And it's all on anticipation of the Fed cutting rates, obviously, but there's more to it than that. All right, so that's really what I have for this week, guys. I know this one's a little late this morning because I was really struggling to come up with the last couple of things to talk about. I really spent a lot of time looking at this morning's headlines and doing some work. I've been up since 7 o'clock, and it took me still until almost 11 to get this one out the door to you this morning. But there was a lot to digest. There were a lot of good stories in the news this morning, so I felt it worth my time to do so. Want to thank all the new patrons who've signed up in the last few days. We've had a few, and some, I think, from coming in from the YouTube channel and my pimping this latest issue. And I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all got your copies of the latest issue. If you haven't, you should check your spam folders, because I know I sent out an blast email to y'all yesterday. And if you're not on the Slack server, you can always get I tend to post it there, or at least I'm there all day long, and but you can always get it from me there. And then obviously it was posted on Patreon as well. So multiple opportunities to make sure that you got what you paid for. So, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to now talk about, and in the future, as we talk about cryptos, now that this idea is out in the open, we're going to talk in terms of scarcity and scarcity factor and these cryptos, and coming in the future. So, because it becomes a very interesting problem, becomes a very interesting discussion as to where we're headed. So, especially as we move into this period of unbelievable political upheaval and then soon monetary upheaval. All right, that's all I've got for today. I'm going to shut up. You guys have a great day. We'll talk soon. Talk Sunday. Keep your stick on the ice.